Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Joanne Yang. I'm the co-VP of NAAAP, which stands for National Association of Asian American Professionals. And I represent the Los Angeles chapter. So we have chapters throughout the US. And NAAP is a nonprofit. We focus on leadership and professional development, community involvement, and just collaborating and building our network with other Asian professionals. And with the new environment, NAP's always looking for ways to connect with people, support local businesses, even entrepreneurs and professionals. And that's where NAP have partnered with Braindom for this webinar today. Our hope is that you walk away with either one action item of how you can be a multiplying leader, or maybe a connection amongst the attendees in this group. So that's our hope. And with Braindom is a company that provides resources and tools for organization and businesses to optimize their employee productivity. And so with today, we have one of Braindom's partnership consultant, Jim Lee. He's also the co-founder of Bespoke, which is I'll let him explain that part. But Jim, in his own professional career, have consulted numerous leaders throughout many different organizations, such as Google, Movember Foundation, Dropbox, you name it. He's from large corporations, small corporation, nonprofit, for-profit. Jim's the guy, and we're glad for him to be here today, share his secret and tools of how he was able to become a multiplying leader and kind of grow his impact from there and help people elevate. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jim, have him take it off. Jim, the floor is yours.
Awesome, Joanne. Thank you so much for having me on here. I actually brought my business partner. He was able to make it today, Abraham Jin. He's in the room, and he'll get a chance to introduce himself. But before we kind of kick that off, we want to make sure that everybody else has an opportunity to engage. I know a lot of people we had a little chat session earlier, got to know each other a little bit, but do you feel free to introduce yourself? Where are you? What are some of the things maybe you're looking forward to learning about today? And our goal is going to be to respond to those answers, because I think that's what's really important, is we're here to serve you and you get what you need. In the meanwhile, I'll kind of share a little bit about myself. I've got a wife, I've got a daughter. On the left is a picture of what we do every Thursday. So this morning, actually, we woke up early at 7:00 a.m. and we went out and checked out the garbage trucks. And that's something that she looks forward to doing. It's the only thing that'll get her out of bed early in the morning. And it's a way that we build our relationship. It's one of those things that she loves to experience, and we get to have a bond. And it's about a time to really engage together. We also went to SeaWorld last Saturday. So this is a picture from that we did. Just shared memories is one of those things of fond times that really helps, I think, when you look at families. Families are not without tears and not without times of pain. But when you look back at all the great times that you've had, that building of trust together to help each other out those tough times is really what helps create what we say a family dynamic that's multiplying. And so we will get to see a little bit of that today. Abraham, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, speaking of multiplying, I had a baby about 2-3 weeks ago now, our fourth boy. And so a lot of wrestling, a lot of Legos, a lot of cleaning up after them. And we're trying to train them to take care of our 2 one-year-old dogs as well. So there's a lot of activity definitely in my house. But without further ado, I'd love to talk about multiplying leadership and how to grow your business and grow your leadership. It's something that I think whether we are officially a positional leader or not, we're always having to influence and grow our capacity. And so we believe that this is going to be very dynamic, effective tools for you to think through as you're thinking about multiplying yourself.
Yeah, so when we look at multiplying ourselves, the first thing that we really want to consider is we have to be somebody that other people want to follow. We have to be someone that we can become. So tell me, Abraham, what's a little bit about the become factor that comes to your mind when we talk about leadership?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we talk through is that you can't give something unless you personally possess it, right? You have to overflow naturally into this as you pour into other people. If you have empty inside of you, you can't give what you don't have, right? And so the first step is you need to become the leader that's really worth following.
And when you're a leader with following and you're someone that other people want to be a part, like that really creates a strategy for us to be able to continue to grow a business that we have, right? You know, Tuja was sharing earlier that he wants to come here today because he wants to learn how to multiply. He has other things that are more important for him to do. But what are some of the things that other people fall into in those categories?
Well, let's talk about math, right? So some leaders divide, others subtract, some add, great leaders multiply. And so if you just think about these four concepts here of math, let's just break it down a little bit. So a dividing leader. These are leaders who like to pit camps, right? They typically say, hey, us versus them. We're always at war, and you're always creating division, right? That's a dividing leader. There are some takers out there, right? Leaders who are only in it for themselves. They're going to be thinking about what can I gain from this relationship? What can I take from this team organization? What can I be able to get freebies from these people and not really add at all, right? That's the subtracting leader. There's leaders though are thinking about adding, right? They're thinking about how can I add value to this person? How can I contribute to be a better presence to this person and to the people that we lead? And then what we really want you to think about is this concept of 100 and X. As you see progressively, as we talk about each of these kind of math signs, ultimately we want to see a leader that is 100% healthy, that is actually thinking about multiplication and expanding their influence and growing their leadership around them. And that really requires a lot of time and intentionality. Jim, what do you think? Have you seen these type of leaders before in your current landscape?
Yeah, you know, in the beginning, I'd have to say most of the bosses I work with probably were minus or dividers, right? They always pit me against other people in my team, which kind of created some resentment, right? We didn't get to like really work with each other and help each other out. It was almost like me against them. Definitely subtracting leaders, that was very common. There are people that just kind of churned a lot of teammates. So in employment, it was almost like, hey, if it's either sink or swim, if you don't make it, fine, we'll get rid of you and we'll get somebody else. I think some of the positive experiences I've had, I don't know about multiplying leader, but they've definitely been adding leaders. I think that's pretty common. You know, they have the best intent. They're really trying to help and grow a business, but they tend to be just adding and maybe creating tasks for everybody to do. But when I think about multiplying leaders, I think it's that one boss that I had back in 2005 that really invested in me. They had the mindset and the intentionality of saying, hey, I want you to do everything that I do, but I know you can take it to the next level. And they didn't have any fear of me showing them up, which I felt like some of my bosses did. They were kind of threatened by my growth and presence. But this was one that learned how to use it and leverage it. So that's my experience. Abraham, what do you find out there typically most leaders are?
Yeah, you know, if we look at the next tool, what we find is that typically most people, at least by intention and confession, they will say that they're adding, right? They're not, most people, if you just tell them, hey, like, what kind of leader are you? Oh, I'm always dividing camps, right? I'm always trying to take away from people. Like, that's not what truly their intentions are. I think given them the benefit of doubt, most leaders want to be leaders who are adding to their team, adding to their organization. And they're typically around that 60 to 80% like health right now, right? But what we're trying to do and what we find all the time is that if you're not intentional, you won't get past that 80% mark where you're actually finding truly a health capacity where you understand your voice, you have security of who you are, and you're able to think through multiplication beyond yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's good. And so for the people in the audience, like, you know, might be a new concept that you've seen written out. Most of you probably have felt this though inside. So take a moment in the chat box. We want you to just kind of think about this for yourself. How would you rate yourself as a leader? Are you realizing that maybe you're putting the business first so much that you don't take the time to multiply others as an opportunity in that exercise? And you're really pushing out for productivity. which might cause you to be either divisive or subtractive. Maybe you realize like, hey, people do matter, and so you're taking more of the relational stance as well. But you're finding it that you have a tension between trying to grow the business as well as grow the people. So you kind of become more of an adder to the business. But do you find yourself that, hey, maybe I want to become a multiplier, and that's what today is. Like, how can not only you grow yourself by becoming a multiplying leader, but in fact, you'll actually grow your business as a byproduct, not necessarily as the end goal of what you're trying to do. So go ahead and share in the chat. Love hearing what Nick is sharing. He's a 3 out of 10. That's very humble of you to kind of share that. I know your heart as someone at the NAAAP San Jose board, you're really trying to be a multiplying leader. You want to give to other people. But yeah, take a moment, put it in the chat box. Love to see what you have. And we'll also respond accordingly. So as we look at this, and one of the things I want to share is like, why is it that we tend to be adders at best? Usually what you find is when people are trying to get really high performance in their organization, they don't really see it as a function of these different components. So what we say is that in order for you to have high performance, you really need to have good capacity. So I'm going to go counterclockwise on this chart to kind of share with you what we mean. So if I want to drive a certain amount of performance, I want to hit some big numbers, some high growth areas, then it really is going to be a limitation of the capacity of the people on my team. And when I see that capacity of my team, it's their ability to actually execute and do the job functions that they need to do. But realistically, can they do their job right? Or can they do that? Do they tend to do it wrong? And that's really about alignment. Can they follow instructions, right? Now, how do you know how to write instructions? How do you know how to tell people how to do their job? Well, it's because you know certain people. It's going to help you to formulate instructions that is going to help them contextualize to what their struggles might be. So if I have a relationship with someone, it's more easier for me to go through the instructions and say, hey, I know this might be a skill set you're not so good at, or if you have some difficulty, I want you to feel comfortable to come to me. That really takes vulnerability in the person to say, hey, I need help. And that only comes from trust that is established in the relationship. Now, how do you establish trust? And how do you create a relationship? Well, it's really learning how to communicate in a way that other people understand. And so most of the times, if you take this and break it down into what it really requires for you to have high performance, it's really going to say, hey, you need to have all these components. But the reality is, money is a necessary item, right? Some people say it's a necessary evil. It isn't evil until it starts violating people. And you violate people when you start pushing for alignment and execution first, instead of giving the time to get to understand the people on your team and learning how to communicate with them. And so if you're the kind of person say, hey, in order for me to grow my business and hit a performance, I just need to tell people what to do a lot more clear and then help them to be able to do it better. So I might give you training that's really for the company, not necessarily for the person. It might be you're giving them tools to say, hey, here is a new computer. And that might be great for the employee, but realistically, like, oh my gosh, they're probably asking for more work. It's almost if I go on Valentine's Day and give my wife a new dishwasher, right? What am I really telling her? Like, I'm not really here to because of what you want. I'm really giving you what you need to do your work and job, right? And just what we say, it just becomes more of a challenge than it is a benefit, right? And so if we're pushing for execution, then we're really, what we're doing is we're missing the human side of things, right? We're treating people like a cog in a wheel. And what it seems like is we're putting our goals more important than the goals of each employee. Now, we want their goals to be for the company, but at the same time, we want the employee to want that to be their goal, and they want to have a certain position because they want to grow certain skills so they can have a better career. So what we say is take the time to learn how to communicate with your team. Take the time to spend on one-on-ones with them, not necessarily just hearing what they can do for the company, but getting a chance to pull from them what are some things that are important in their career, in their lives, that you can provide them, and how the company becomes a vehicle for that type of success. And once you do that, you'll see the relationship start to flow. And what we say is the flywheel will start to spin around and around, and you'll start gaining capacity and you'll start gaining performance. All right. Anything here, Abraham, that you want to kind of pull out for the audience here?
What I find a lot of times is that if you have a high churn rate, a lot of compliance, typically as your kind of culture, you probably really focus on that red, the alignment and execution a lot. But typically, if you are able to have a good foundation of communication and relationship, you're going to get engagement with your people because you're going to be able to know their vision, their professional development, their passions, and you're able to then align them in light of their voice so that they can execute with greater performance.
And that's our hope, is that you'll see that people want to work for you, and that's engagement. But we force people to work for you because they have to make their money, then that's called compliance. And typically in a compliance type of an area, people tend to do 40% less of their actual capacity.
Yeah.
So a great way to increase capacity by 40%, create communication, build a relationship, do that intentionally, and you'll see people go. So in the chat box, I threw a quick question. Out of these metrics, what do you tend to push the most? Where do you see yourself? Are you tending to drive communication relationships, or are you tending to push for alignment and execution? What do you tend to do? And what do you tend to feel? Because we multiply what we've received. So if your leaders have always been about alignment and execution, most likely that's all you know on how to get great capacity and performance. But if you're kind of somebody that's trying to do this on their own and doing it for the first time, you'll see that maybe communication relationships is something that you do a little bit too much of. Abraham, what would you say as a leader, if you did a little bit too much of communication and relationships, how could that create a negative capacity?
Yeah, sometimes it can kind of create a kumbaya type of mentality. You're always in a campfire, always like nice. You're the people pleaser. You tend to create. Everyone likes you, right? You're the good cop out of the bad cop type of relationship, and as a result, you may be very supportive. But guess what? If you're overemphasizing that and you're almost neglecting or abdicating your role to bring alignment and execution, you could be basically having issues with regards to traction, regards to the operational goals that you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, what happens if you push too much on alignment and execution? What do you think people experience?
I mean, that's where, you find people like feeling like they're just a cog in a wheel, right? They feel like they're just in the system. They feel like a pawn in the chessboard. They don't have a relationship. And the funny thing is, the greatest way to foster engagement and the engagement scores to increase within your team is always directly in the relationship between the manager and the direct report. It's not like when you throw like a nice beer tab out there or have these fun little happy hours. It's really at the end of the day, the work satisfaction comes, you get the best bang for your buck when you actually really increase that management to the direct report relationship. Mm-hmm. And that communication. I think when that's solved, then you're going to be able to truly have engagement instead of compliance when you force only the alignment and execution.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's good, because what you shared, I think some things that I see in the chat box, there's a lot of people that naturally lean towards A and then they go to B. But sometimes you feel the pressure of B kind of mounting up, and we could try to forget how A can create B, but we kind of distinguish them into different silos that we don't feel like we can do. And so when we have those type of relationships with people, I think we need to take a step back and realize like, hey, we don't need to treat everybody the way we want to be treated. I think we need to realize like, hey, different people need to be treated differently, because some people, even your employees, might want B. Like there are people that are naturally lean towards B. They want to work hard. They want to be the slave. They want to be driven almost like a slave, right? Like they want like push, give me more work. But again, if you don't tend to do the A with them, then you're going to find that they're going to have some growth that might not really align with your corporate values or your company's mission and vision. So, Abe, can you talk about a little bit about growth for us?
Yeah, absolutely. We like to use a plant analogy, right? And let's say you bought a plant from the internet, purchased it with a good price, got the best price available. And from that online description, you thought this plant was going to grow and it looked really good on paper, right? At least on the description and the objectives of what this plant can do, right? And you purchase it. When you think about growth of that plant that you purchased from the internet, okay? Mm-hmm. And I want to take this analogy of you, if you're a recruiter or you're a boss and you're trying to recruit different people from online, you get the resume, you just get it on paper, it looks good, you You kind of go through a vetting process and you purchase them, right? You basically have them on staff. Who's responsible for the growth of that plant? The gardener or the plant?
Well, I would like to think it's my boss's responsibility, the gardener's responsibility for me to grow, isn't it?
What do you guys think?
What do you think?
It's kind of a trick question, right? It's both. And it's that we, as employees, we need to want to grow. And most plants, they want to grow. They're made to grow, right? They desire to grow.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there's an ownership that as leaders, if we have issues with our plants, we can't blame, oh, you plant, why'd you turn yellow? Why are you dwindling? Like, that's why I get cactuses, right? It's a lot easier. I really do have cactuses. But you can know that there's actually an ownership of the manager and the direct leader to actually provide the right ingredients for that ecosystem to be established in a way where the plant can grow, right? So
Yeah,
what are
most
some
people-
things? Yeah.
And that's what most people think, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think most people think like, hey, I got a new job. I'm going to come up here. It's my boss's job to make sure that I could do a good job in the work that I do, right? And we put a lot of pressure and we put a lot of responsibility on them to take care of me, and also like 8 other my teammates, which when you think about it, it's not really feasible, right?
Yeah. So when you look at this continual analogy as a gardener to a plant, there's a couple of things that we need to think about, right? We need to be able to give them water, right? We need to give them the right nutrition and the right sunlight. Some plants need less sunlight exposure. Some need more. Some needs more water. Some people need less, right? And so depending on the plant, you have to adjust. And let's say this is a fruit-bearing plant, right? When they bear fruit might be very different in their cycle compared to other plants, right? So our expectation, how we impose or do the tending of these plants need to be adjusted according to what that plant needs versus what we always need.
And it's something interesting that you said, right? Because you chose a cactus, right? They tend to be a lot less maintenance when it comes to making sure that you water them enough, giving them enough nutrition. It's almost like high sunlight, which is really easy to do. You throw them by the window and they flourish and they grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people that I don't know why, but when I have like an open house from 6 years ago, people gave me plants, and it was like the most burdensome thing because I am horrible in giving them the right sunlight, the right water, or whatever nutrition. Especially orchids, they're so pretty, but they're the hardest thing in the world to carry. I have 4 left, but they're artificial. Like the 6 other ones that I got that are real, they're like long gone. But what I do enjoy is, and I think going back to the people analogy, like I wish every person came with that little stick, that plastic stick in the soil that told me like, hey, this is how much water you need to give them. This is how much sunlight you need to do. And like every now and then, this is how much nutrition you give.
Yeah.
But people don't come with those instruction cards, do they?
Yeah, they don't. And that's what we call, those instruction cards are called self-awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, if the employee is mature and they're self-aware, they're going to be able to tell you, hey, this is what I need basically for me to grow. And they're going to be able to have the maturity to communicate that out to their manager. But even better, if that manager has the capability to pull that out and even give the right feedback loop, then they're going to be able to calibrate and make sure each plant grows accordingly differently in the way that they need.
Mm-hmm. So then, as a manager, what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that each plant is getting enough of those different items for their growth, right? If I were to take this back to the office, right? How do I know that each employee is going to get the right training, the right tools, and the right salary, whatever the combination is for each company? Like, how do I know like I'm going to be able to manage that and provide that to them?
I think that's where you have to actually have the dialogue, right? And to create a process and roadmap, what is your expectation of how you're going to see their growth, and create a common language and a common framework of where they stand with you in regards to your expectation, which I believe we're going to be going deeper into, showing you actually a visual tool that is going to give you a quick roadmap of the journey that they will go through, whether this represents a specific role or maybe even a specific skill set, right? And ideally, what we want to have them go through is this ability for them to kind of go through a place of, unconscious incompetence to a place where they grow in increasing competence of areas that they are weak in, and then that they can actually start to become conscious competent. And then to the point that they go into the last stage really is where they are, it's like the air they breathe. They don't have to even think about it and they're truly competent, right? That's kind of the overview and the process. And we're going to go deeper into how to actually walk with others through this. But if you don't actually expect that this is the journey of every employee, then either you're going to be frustrated or they're going to be frustrated, right? And at the worst, you're going to find them be entering into that pit of despair, which we'll continue to go deeper into explain what that really is.
Yeah, and one of the key things we want everyone to realize is like there's actually a process. In order for your business to get launched off the ground, in order for you to hit the goals, for you to realize the vision that you have to realize the constraint of that growth is limited by your ability to develop others and the capacity of your employees to learn. Now, you could accelerate that by using some of these tools that we're going to share with you today. And hopefully you'll be able to incorporate that into your business plan. But if you don't, then what you're really doing is you're pushing for an outcome and hoping somebody else is going to do it. And a lot of times what we're doing is we'd rather just take this USB stick, implant it in our brain, download everything that we have, and then shove it back into their brain. But that's not the reality of what really happens. It is the matrix.
I love
that. Let's kind of go through a little example, and maybe this is what I want everybody to realize. When you are actually developing other people, when you have a new hire, you have to take the intentional time to take their skill set from what Abraham said of unconscious incompetency to unconscious competency, meaning they have to be able to do something as well as you have. Now, in this picture, Abraham, what do you see?
Well, I see an old man hovering over a little man, and he's looking like he's actually getting the hammer. And at least the little man, he's very intentional. He's looking, right? You can see that he's very conscious in the way that he's actually holding his tool. I could see maybe the old man, he's not really paying attention to what he's doing, but he knows what he's doing, right? Like it's just kind of like it's for him, it's unconscious competence. Like it's the air he breathes is to hold a shoe and to do what he needs to do to get it done, right? I definitely see a lot more of like attentiveness that you see, and definitely the old man is observing and being kind of meticulous about how the little man is engaging his work.
Yeah, there's a lot of intentionality in what the older man is doing for the younger boy. The older man's probably been collaring for 50 years plus. The young boy, 50 minutes at most, right? But he's creating a psychologically safe place for the development of the younger person that he would want to grow and want to do more. And so this is like the intentional transfer. In order for you to be a multiplying leader, you have to be present at every step of the development of the people that you're in, not just waiting for that results of the person to be able to do the work without you. Because what happens is when you take the time to invest in them, you're learning to communicate. Take this as an opportunity to learn how to talk to the person. What are their nuances? What are some of the language slang that they might have that you didn't realize, but it's going to really connect with them? And then as you do this, you're then going to build that relationship of trust between you and your apprentice, so that as pressure mounts and as you need higher execution, you're going to be able to get the alignment that they have because they understand you. You're going to talk about those words. I almost liken it to, you ever play charades with friends, and it's almost like they've got this complex card, and in like 5 different like hand signals, they already figured it out. Like, dude, what happened, right? That is their ability to communicate and be so well aligned due to their relationship that they're actually able to get through those cards a lot faster. So let's go through this a little bit. Abraham, can you kind of navigate us through the first step? Where I'm talking about, like, I got a new hire, this person's green, they said they're going to do the job. What can I really expect?
In this space, I think the manager or the person that's apprenticing the new person on the job, they need to say, come follow me, right? They need to say, hey, imitate me exactly the way that we need to do it. And I want you to copy it exactly, right? So the manager would say, I do, you watch, right? or the expert is saying, I do, you watch. And so they're literally observing. Now, in that space, the one who is watching or the one who's observing, they may think idealistic, oh, this is a piece of cake, right? I remember when when I first got onto the wheel of a car and I tried to drive, I thought it was a piece of cake. Like mom can do it. I can do that, right? I remember I was sweating, right? And there was things that I didn't know, but until I actually first saw her do it and then go into the next stage, I started to realize there's areas that I'm kind of having a little bit of a gap in.
And so when you're in that gap and you're creating that moment of like, hey, I thought I knew what I was going to do. Like sometimes maybe these employees come in, they're like, I thought I knew what this job was, but now I really understand what that job is. What's so important about that next step that if you don't do it, you're going to kind of set yourself for disaster?
Yeah. Well, as a manager or a director or the expert, you have to tell them, hey, you're going to grow an increasing amount of incompetency. Like you're going to start to be aware that you suck. And you may start to develop the sense of imposter syndrome, right? You're going to start to feel like you don't measure up. It's like, tell them that it's actually a good thing. Tell them that it's normal, because that is part of the learning process. You don't know everything perfectly, especially in the way that they do it, right? And so as someone who is new into this journey, know that you're going to be having an increasing understanding of your gaps. And if you are in that position of learning a new role, the most responsive way to react to all of this journey is to say, hey, what are my gaps? I want to know areas I'm missing. What do I need to grow in? When you ask more attentively and intentionally to the higher ups in regards to managing your process, they're going to see you as responsive and they're going to give you more feedback. And guess what? You're going to grow in greater conscious incompetence, which is a good thing.
You know, a lot of times I see leaders that even aren't willing to listen or hear. They just like, hey, this is all you need to know. I got it. Just do this, and that's all it takes. So here's the instructions. I showed you once. You know, why don't you try to figure it out and then come back to me? And when we do that, you know, a lot of times people aren't successful, and most leaders get frustrated because what they tend to do is they give the information and hope that they're able to imitate what the leader did. Imagine if the shoe cobbler said, hey, this is how you fix a shoe. You just got to take the piece, you got to take the welting off, you know, refinish the leather, throw in some stitches, hammer the nails, and then it's done. But if that person tries to imitate that, take that information, and without even having a chance to see what the leader meant by it, what their instructions were, then what, instead of imitating and actually being able to build on top of that skill and innovating, what they tend to do is take that information, interpret it in their own way, and then lead into a dangerous side of innovation, which is like, hey, that is not what I expected. That is not what I told you for, right?
Yeah.
So what's one ways that we can prevent dangerous innovation from happening?
We really need to make sure that we truly follow the way that they actually do it. So if we can find some way to model it, you can be able to copy exactly to it. We say, hey, don't try to be and make it your own way first. Try to make sure that you do it exactly the way that they want it. And so if you're in a new job or new role, you just invite them to do that. I don't expect you to have your own twists and turns in regards to doing this thing. I want you to follow exactly what I'm doing. But later on, I want you to do it in your way. But first, do it my way. And then you'll grow to be able to have the competency to adapt to what works exactly for you later on. Now, there was a question out there is, how come it's unconscious incompetence and then going to conscious incompetence? Well, what we find is that at first, you just don't know that you don't know. Like you have a romanticized view that you are awesome, right? You don't even know that you suck. But now you have an increasing understanding that you suck, right? And a good manager will actually show them, here are your gaps. I see your potential, but these are your gaps. And the more clear and more ownership that you have, and with humility, you embrace these gaps, then you can start to get into the ability to turn that corner so I can help you to be more conscious, competent.
Yeah, and a lot of times most leaders do what Suzanne wrote in the text book, right? I do, you watch, you do, I watch. Because words have subjective meanings to it. And you could tell somebody to do something, But if you're not willing to actually let them help along the way, then they're not developing. You're actually expecting to fully develop after you've shared something verbally. And everybody has to go through this thing called the pit of despair. You can't avoid it, but your goal is to make sure they're aware of it. And then we minimize that imposter syndrome that Abraham talked about. So Abraham, tell me a little bit more about this pit of despair.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to a military leader. And he says, in fact, we intentionally put people into pit of despair, and in fact, that is actually what every leader should do. Is like, hey, I expect you to have a learning curve. You're not going to have it perfectly. You will feel at times certain areas you're going to feel like, man, a hopelessness in it. It's good because you're not. We don't expect you to be an expert in it. But here's the thing: I want you to feel safe to know that you can tell me when you're actually feeling a little bit of hopelessness in certain areas. Because I'd rather have you share that with me versus not share it at all, right? So I think kind of showing them this is the roadmap of your development and this is part of that journey is when you turn that corner, you will feel a little bit of pit of despair. It's normal. Because when you don't create that transparency and that vulnerability and that safe space, guess what? Weird things grow in the dark. And that pit can be very dark sometimes. And so we need to be okay with having people there and to know that, hey, when you're going to walk for the first time, you're going to fall a couple times. And that falling helps you to truly adjust accordingly to truly walk.
Yeah. And that's why we need to be there, right? We want them to, some leaders say, I give you enough rope to hang yourself, but not necessarily enough to really cause damage to the company. And that's why we want to make sure that we do and we help them along the way, not necessarily leave them abandoned, So what are some things that we could do to make sure that we help other people stay in the pit of despair as little as they need to?
Well, the question I want to ask back to is, whose responsibility for that employee to come out of that pit of despair?
Well, it's always the manager, right? Doesn't the leader create the pathway for others to follow?
Well, Jim, you're just good at acting through this process. It is both, right? Okay. It's going to be the employee and the manager. Like it's employees' responsibility to communicate the despair, right? And then it is also the responsibility of the employer or the manager to be able to see the pulse of your people and to know that they're struggling and to then do these three things. If you notice someone is struggling, hey, spend some time. Informal, meaning schedule it out in your one-on-ones, or informal, but also in informal. Informal is like having a coffee. It's like, hey, let's just connect over lunch, right? Or formal would be in your one-on-one times, right? And so, and then you have vision. Some people need a little bit more of a short-term, clear vision of what they need to do exactly in this week, right? Where others, they need to see the bigger vision of the long-term of the end goal in mind as they're doing this mundane task, right? And so depending on the person, you may actually calibrate how much short-term or long-term you give them. And everyone loves encouragement. And obviously, if it's more specific, even better versus a generic good job, right? Like, well, what was good, right? We want to be very specific in that journey. And if you notice anyone in that pit of despair, take these three ingredients, pour it on them. They're going to feel a lot more life and energy again.
Yeah, and what I want the audience to realize is because it takes both ways. We all have a bias that we either prefer informal or formal when it comes to time. Like Abraham, he loves formal time. Like when you have to have one-on-ones for him for the rest of the year, he will schedule every single one of them out. It's very formal. And you might almost feel like you're in a trap if you have a boss like Abraham, that he's never approachable outside those hours. For me, I love informal. I'm the kind of person to say, hey, let's grab 10 minutes. Let's talk for an hour. I don't like to schedule way far in advance because I want something to be able to occur in between. These are personal preferences, but you need to have both, right? So I've learned to schedule one-on-one times as well as be open for my informal things that I do. And Abraham is approachable informally and he'll have those conversations, but he always likes to have formal times because you don't know when the person that you're leading needs you. And you always want to have that ability to kind of like have that open door policy that when they're in that pit of despair, that you're accessible. Otherwise, they're going to feel left behind and stranded. When it comes to vision, right? Some of us are naturally about getting things done right away. But if we don't help people to see what the long-term goal there is, then they'll get stuck doing the same thing over and over again and not really feel like they have a future. On the flip side, some people could just be about the future. It's like, hey, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. But some people might feel like, wow, okay, that sounds way unattainable because I'm just barely able to get to the stuff that I need to do now done, right? And so you need to be able to share both. Hey, long term, I'm going to get you to do this all on your own. You could do it. I believe in you. But right now, I just want you to focus on these 2 or 3 things, and then we'll tackle that road when we get there, you know? And then I think when it comes to encouragement, you know, I tend to be a very generalized encourager. Suzanne will tell you amazing is like an American word, I think she says. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Thank you. That was great, right? And Suzanne might be like, okay, I don't know what I specifically did that was amazing, but now I feel like I have to do everything over and again. And that's kind of daunting for me because I don't even really know what I did, right? That's where specific encouragement is so important to say, hey, Suzanne, that was amazing. I loved how you took the time to really pick up every client's prescription, go through it in detail, make sure there were no errors, and then assign to them specific recommendations, whether their work style or their lifestyle is going to require contact lenses or glasses, and then actually going through that step of what it's going to take for them to do that. If I do that to Suzanne, she's going to know, okay, those are the things I need to continue to imitate. And that way I can develop on the other skills that I realize I got to work on, right? And so once you take that time in helping them get out of the pit of despair, what you find is they're starting to build competency. At first, remember, they didn't know what they didn't know. They're like, oh my gosh, now I know what this job is. It seems a little daunting, right? I am conscious of my incompetency. And then what we want them to do is like, hey, you're in this pit of despair, but let's start working on the competency. I know it's scary to try to do it for the first time, but I'm here to help you. And that's really why we want them to say, hey, I want to do, but you're going to help. I want you to get familiar with these tasks. And then after that, I'm going to start letting you do it, but I'm here to support you along the way. And that's literally helping them out the ladder, right? It's holding the ladder for some, hey, I'm here to make you succeed. So Abraham, what would you say is like, we need to be aware of as we navigate and turn that corner?
Yeah, you know, as you're trying to increase the competency of that, you need to be very specific. Not only are you clear to say, hey, these are the 10 objectives that you need to have as your job. These are the gaps that you had. Maybe 7 out of 10, you're really sucking it up right now. You're not really measuring up in regards to industry standards. You're helping them in those 7 areas now to really grow in conscious competence, giving them more ownership, more opportunities for them to actually perform, maybe carrying more 70% of it now of the work, where you're now taking about 30% of the work, right? And that's when you start to go into the side of the bottom part of the square.
Right. And that's what we want to say. Like, you want to grow and manage that competency because, again, it's taunting. Like, anything that you have to learn to do is almost like you have to do it with the opposite hand. You know, writing with our preferred dominant hand is always easy, but having to learn how to do your other hand, it's going to be tough. But we want them to grow that intentionally and not create more failure than they can hide. Now, a lot of people, right, if you have the boss that says like, hey, I want you to watch me do this. I'm going to explain it to you. Take good notes. All right, cool. You got it. All right, I'll call me when you have any questions. What that really does is create this situation, right, where you're really saying, hey, I think I told you enough, but I'm not going to be here to watch you do it, to affirm what you know, or to really help you through those tough times to train you. I'm just expecting your competency to be right there. And the problem is, like most managers, it's so easy for them, right? The cobbler, he's been doing this for years. He knows it in and out. But if he's not aware of how hard it is for somebody else to realize that right away, then he's going to shortcut the growth process. Anything else, Abraham, that you've seen on this slide?
You know, yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you notice that this has been the typical pattern where you tend to delegate something and then they always never measure up, and then they tend to, you get frustrated, they get frustrated. That's usually probably the journey of what you see here, right here in the danger zone, right? Mm-hmm. It really does require intentionality for you to walk through slide 2 and slide 3 of this box, of the leadership box. It takes a lot of time, and also you need to be compassionate about the person that you're leading, because like we said, that plant analogy, each plant or each person needs different ingredients for them to feel like they can actually overcome each of those sides. Mm-hmm. I love how, you know, our visual shows that it's like a pendulum swing. It's those arrows going back and forth. And it does feel that. Sometimes it feels like you're go to the next level and you go to the bottom square and then you're going to go back. And it is that process. So that is a normal journey of that. There's going to be 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And hopefully the process would be that we'd be able to patiently walk them through greater competency.
Yeah, and each one of us will naturally have difficulty in taking each person through this journey. There are certain things that certain people really enjoy doing. Some people are really great at just telling people what to do. Some people are really good at like showing people what to do. Some people are really good at watching other people do the work. And some people are really just good like, hey, I like totally want to mentor you, I totally want to help you every step of the way. But we have to realize which of these we don't tend to do. Which of those things do we tend to gloss over? And if we forget that what we don't give for each plant that we want to grow in our company, then what we're going to do is really vitally miss an opportunity for them to develop like you. And you're going to really multiply fragments of yourself and get frustrated that they didn't pick up on some things that you really wanted them to learn. And so for you in the audience, like take a moment and look at this and say, you know, which side of this do you tend to have the most difficulty naturally? I would say for me, I think the bottom one is the hardest part for me. I have difficulty just watching other people do the work because I want to believe that they can do it so that I can go do something else. I have so much work. Hey, if they can do it like 80% of the way, then they're good. But I can realize that they're doing 80%, they might think they're failing 80% of the time, right? And that's why it's so important for me to take the time to sit with people, watch them do it. And even though I think they totally got it, I'm watching for that 20% that they might not get right, but in their mind, they think it's 80% of the time. Abraham, which one of these steps do you think you feel you struggle with the most?
I think I don't mind, people follow me in step 1. I think the most taxing thing for me personally would be I want people to get it faster. So I don't mind actually helping them to know what the gaps are, but it's really that journey of taking that from side 2 to side 3. It's going to take a lot of energy, a lot of patience. That little clock is there, right, to really communicate. It takes time, intentionality. It takes a lot of leaning into having a lot of conversations to calibrate what your expectations are and the expectations of the ones that you lead.
Yeah, so each one of us struggles. We each naturally struggle. So take a moment, I'll throw back the slide again, but which one of these do you think you naturally struggle with? And then share in the chat box, allows different people to hear that different people need different things. So as we kind of wrap up and we kind of go through the ability for you to multiply into others, we believe that the key is going to be the pit of despair for both. As the trainer, your ability to manage and realize there is a pit of despair is going to actually force you to do these 2 sides, right? Because you're here, you're in the crux of it. I was like, wow, this person got here a little too fast. I might need to spend a little bit more time here. Or this person's not getting out. I need to spend some more time allowing them to work with me or them to show that they actually could do the job because I believe in them, but they don't believe in themselves. Right? So what we say is the multiplying leaders growth opportunity tends to be the one that gives them the best when it comes to the pit of despair. Would you agree? Oh, you're mute.
Sorry. Sometimes what we find is that, when to navigate the danger zone intentionally, these are 3 areas that can really help for growth opportunities for you. And so for some of you, as you guys have navigated maybe people that have felt like they're in the pit of despair, these are 3 kind of action points that you could potentially do to increase your capacity, increase your influence, increase your leadership presence with those that you love and lead. And so out of these 3, as you look at them, love to see even in on the chat room, which one do you think you need to implement more? Number 1, number 2, or number 3? Just give you some time to just read that and to share what you think you want to do in regards to expanding your capacity and influence with those that are maybe in the pit of despair.
most entrepreneurs, I would say time is always underrated. Um, Most entrepreneurs love to have their schedules jam-packed back to back. There's so much to do. There's so much vision that they have. There's so much opportunities that they see ahead of them, but they tend to over promise and under deliver when it comes to the employees, meaning that, we tend to hire them and say, hey, this is a great place for you to work. I'll totally train you. You'll get to learn how to do everything. And we say that in a way of what we would receive and how we would experience ourselves, but really need to put ourselves into the other shoes to be able to realize they need all three of these. And that's going to always be subjective. And I don't think it's really, realistically, it's not, unless you're able to understand your tendencies and be able to see how to filter out employees, you really can't schedule your future unless you can ramp up your team. And that usually doesn't happen until you have somebody on board. So think about it, right? Like these ones and number twos or number threes, like that you need to do, like imagine somebody specifically that actually needs it, and take time. So we hope that like from today, you're able to take 2 takeaways from tonight for the session and just say, hey, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start doing more time formally or more time informally, or I'm going to learn to actually create more of a short-term vision than a long-term vision. I'm going to help people to realize like what they need to do today, not necessarily, hey, what we're going to get to do down the road, or vice versa. Like you might talk too much about what they need to do today, but they don't see the forest from the trees and they can't really understand what is this all leading up to. We all have our own biases, and create an action plan. And some of that might be you just need some training yourself. Our hope is today we're doing a little bit of that square with you. Realistically, we're not putting you in the pit of despair, right? We're realistically just informing. You didn't know what you didn't know about developing other people and how to grow them today. Maybe now you're aware of the things that you know and you now have to start practicing it, but you might start getting to the pit of despair as you're trying to do this, right? And if that's the case, we want you to be able to do 2 things. One is you're always welcome, even right now, to ask questions, jot down our contact information. Our hope at Bespoke is to really help create healthy organizations and help leaders to grow. So feel free to send us emails, schedule times with us. I know several people actually on this call here, Kathy, Jenny, Joanne, I've all had a chance to spend time with them to help them to grow through their situations. And we want you to be able to experience that as well. But another opportunity we have is the NAAAP cohort. Aram, talk a little bit about how the cohort can also help them out in this multiplying others.
Yeah, we've really created a process for people to take information to start to imitate and really help you to discover your own true leadership voice. And so that you can continue this journey of multiplying your growth and your presence around you. And so what we've done is really leveraged a high-tech solution where we actually have a lot of pre-recorded pathways and videos. And then what we do is we actually go into a module review where we're able to come together live and we talk about what we've learned together. Then we actually get into a coaching group where we're able to really process a deeper application. And we're able to kind of create a rhythm of those 3 things: videos, module review, core groups. And as we do that over the 4 months, you start to grow in competency, carry a common language and tool set, and actually grow in community with those that you go through this journey. Most people don't sign up to actually say, I want to grow in community. But the fun thing is that in this, a lot of people said that's probably the best thing, is that they've learned to build friendships and a common way to give each other feedback to really grow their leadership presence.
Thank you. Yeah, so everything we try to do at Bespoke is to model this square. Currently we're developing other coaches on our team. We really want to take the time. Some people are so eager, they don't know what they don't know, and they just want to rush into actually becoming a coach. We say, hey, let's take a step back and let's temper that timeline to make sure that you can be successful and not be in that pit of despair. But before we keep moving forward, I just want to take the time for people to ask questions. Joanne, I don't know if there's any questions out there or if people in the audience want to ask, and feel free to ask away. You might have a problem at your company that we can help you to solve.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in our brokerage, everyone's kind of either out of the office. Some people are doing their own thing. They never come in because it's not like not necessary. So I'm trying to build kind of like a team atmosphere somewhat. So there is some sort of like, oh, we're part of, a team. What would you suggest to kind of do that?
Abraham, what do you think?
I think one thing, because they're not forced to work together, right? You're trying to create a team that is not, necessarily structured that way, but an opportunity to do something beyond themselves, right? And
Yeah, and I think, well, sometimes there's like a disconnect because people will be doing projects, and if we knew about them, then we could actually collaborate. But because we don't, you know, we don't like meet or anything, sometimes it just kind of gets, we don't know what's going on unless, someone tells us. So, yeah, just wondering what I can do to kind of bring the team together. Not,
I think a big thing is really knowing what is the value add to work as a team, right? And to really define what that you can contribute to this whole process as you work together. And so if there's clear objectives like, hey, team transparency so that we could potentially collaborate for bigger things, right? What that looks like practically is that we're going to have rhythms of communication of our portfolio and what we're doing, right? And that's going to really help you to say, like, you can quickly grow your portfolio wisdom and experience, because what? Now it's not just your own portfolio, you're actually now adding the portfolio of other people, and you have a collective wisdom and experience, right? So that'll be one example of one value add, right, to working together, right? But you can imagine, think about I would audit all the value adds in regards to that and think through a practical example of what would that rhythm be in regards to working as a team. And when that's clear, I think, and you clearly show the value add, you're going to be able to really help people to lean into this process. Obviously, it has to be a win-win, mutual beneficial relationship, because you're not necessarily, if you can actually incentivize this where it could be a team win, then obviously they're gonna want to work as a team even more so. If it's not going to be incentivized in any way where it doesn't really add value to the team overall, then it could start to disassemble. And so those are some feedback and thoughts that I would have in regards to the current leadership landscape that you're navigating.
Well, I was thinking about just doing kind of like a bi-weekly meeting, very, just you can get on a Zoom call or whoever can meet at the office, and just do a 45-minute like review of, hey, what projects are you working on? And then by everyone just sharing that, you can like make the connections yourself, and then kind of break off one-on-one after. So I thought that will be a good value on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's a great solution there too. It's kind of like what Abraham's saying, right? So part of it is, if we look at this, maybe your company in some aspect is in the pit of despair and you're seeing that, Jenny, but they don't see it. So what you're doing is you're really helping the company by giving it some formal time instead of just informal time together. And then you're helping them to see, hey, here's some short-term benefits that we're trying to do with sharing some of the things that we're going through. But the long-term goal that we have is that we have a community within our company that we don't ever feel like we have to be alone. And so you could even add some things that if you're the hub between everybody, to say, hey, thanks everybody for joining. I just want to highlight some great work that people are doing, be specific about what they did. And then either people can share about what are some things that they want to learn from the person that actually did that specific role very well. But then also breaking them up, also helps them to learn how to communicate with each other and build relationships. So, using this tool as the pit of despair just helps you to formulate, okay, maybe I'm missing some formal time and I need to be clear on sharing what my short-term and the long-term vision is for this.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, great question. Anyone else? Bye, Suzanne. Thanks for coming out. You know, it's like 5 in the morning for you. Tujar, did you have any questions? Anything that we could help apply for your kingdom to come?
Yeah, well, I guess the one thing I have is, you know, I don't currently have a team that I work with that I hired on. It's more so like freelance work.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm kind of trying to figure out for myself, like, you know, how do I implement this where, you know, when, like, for example, I hired someone to do my, like, all of my visuals,
Mm-hmm.
and I know the content I want to put out, but I have no idea how to do any of the, you know, graphic design or whatnot. And
Mm-hmm.
I think from that, it's like my own incompetence, you know, and how do I support someone to become competent in that area if that's actually my weak spot, and that's what I'm hiring them for. So anything around that at all?
Yeah, I think it's first realizing what your incompetency is, and you're outsourcing that incompetency, and that's okay. But giving yourself to have time with them in a way that they actually get to know your values or what you want to project, showing them and communicating them to them effectively. Don't make them do the guesswork for you. Do some homework in advance on what you're looking for. And the more you can create those puzzle pieces for them to be able to copy, right? They're going to imitate. Then they'll be able to innovate from there because you've kind of framed a picture for them to start painting the rest of for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
What you're conscious, what you are unconsciously competent is what you want to see in the end vision of these visuals, right? You may not be able to actually execute on it, but you can have a sense of like, hey, where it needs to go, right? And so all of what Jim is saying, and most, you know, marketing firms, they typically have some type of discovery process, right? They ask you tons of questions to go through your mission, vision, values, and kind of all of your value add, and so that they could actually communicate all of those things, which is going to be both informal and formal time that you will spend with them to really help them to understand that. Because if they don't do that informal and formal time with you, then they're going to be guessing, and they may be projecting a brand that you aren't really wanting them to communicate, right? And so that's where you're going to have to continue to calibrate more what you want to see in the short term and the long term, and be very specific in calibrating those conversations.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
And if anybody else, like any other vendor you have, like you have to realize what is their preference style. If their preference is always informal, they're just kind of short term, then you're gonna have to press for like some formal time and just check in with them so that you're in that right rhythm. And then, you know, you making your vendors easier to work with you, you'll always get more priority than some of their other clients that they have as well.
It's a really good point. Yeah, thanks a lot, both of you.
Uh-huh. Anyone else? Kathy, Julie, Jeff, Nick?
I just had a quick share, or two things. One was I just kind of had that situation as far as the informal and formal time with one of our vendors. And we would always just kind of get these quick spurted emails of, you know, hey, can you review this document for us, or can you approve this really quick? And it was always, we're kind of in this fire drill mode, and we realized it just wasn't working because it would always be a tight turnaround time. So just this last week, we started asking for Wednesday check-ins. I knew they didn't want it because I think they're used to being kind of informal, but we asked for it. So it was good. We had 30 minutes yesterday, and we'll have it probably now for the next 10 weeks because we needed it. And it at least gave him an opportunity for us to have a conversation and to think a little bit ahead, like, what do you need from us in the next coming week? And trying to just get ahead of it a little bit. So we just actually experienced that. So it was helpful when they were kind of always doing last minute. We started scheduling like, hey, let's just check in. And, you know, if we don't have anything, it'll be a 10-minute meeting. If we do, if we can use the 30 minutes, that's great. And so we just started that yesterday. So that was helpful.
That's good. It's a great way to under promise, you know, over deliver, you know, because everyone's scheduled at an hour and they're going to be like happy that you gave 50 minutes back to them.
Right. Exactly.
Jenny, we're going to toss it over to you. I think that's pretty much the end of our presentation.
Okay. Yeah. what I will do is just gonna give you guys some call to action if you like this presentation. And I also have it, I'll put it in the text
Jen
first.
Jenny is also the other co-VP of NAAAP LA. So
AKA Level Up Sister with Joanne Yang. So if you liked what Jim has, Jim's presentation, we do have an upcoming cohort, September 29th at 5, and I put the link in the chat box. And then also, we always like to let everyone know that, hey, if you're not a member already of NAAAP, go ahead and sign up. I'd like to say we're pretty cool people, and we we really do our best to provide value to all of our members, whether it's personal development, networking, socializing. And then once you join as a member, you can sign up and be part of our Facebook group, which is pretty cool. And that is pretty much it. So if you liked kind of what you saw today, go ahead and sign up in the link for the cohort. It's at 5 o'clock. And Jim, I'm not sure, do NAAP members get is it the same if you're a NAAP member versus the non-NAAP member?
Yeah, so what Bespoke did is we partnered with NAAP. We wanted to find a way that we can empower as many Asian people as possible. So this cohort part is free, but we want you to be a NAAP member, right? So if you're not a NAAP member, please sign up, and then what Jenny will do is reach out to you and say, hey, can you support us by giving us a $35 membership? And what it does, it just allows them to be empowered to kind of provide these even more. So what we wanted to do is just give them an opportunity to take something that we're already doing on our own website that people are going through at Leadership Art, but contextualize it in a way for Asian Americans that are going through their leadership and understand how does our culture create this bias where a lot of times Asians don't tend to be able to make it up, be successful, right? We call that, some people call it the bamboo ceiling. We call that an Asian leadership box, where we're so confined into how we do things. We tend to be that, entrepreneur spirit, which is great, but we're no different from maybe the small liquor store shop owner that most Asian people had. It's just in a different industry, right? We can't multiply ourselves, we don't grow ourselves. So that's a lot of what this cohort is our goal to really help more Asian Americans fill up those elevated seats in leadership.
Yep. And I mean, I've taken the cohort now. It's the second time around, and I just learned something from it every time. And that pit of despair that, you mentioned, it's something that, I've had areas of leadership where I've definitely been in the pit of despair, and I was able to really crawl out of it, because I had people like Jim and like all the other, cohort members who were there to really, just kind of encourage me to, hey, try something new. And how'd it go? Great, it worked, awesome. If it didn't work as well, then having that encouragement and the other people to kind of walk you through that process was just really empowering, and just really getting out of situations that time and time again I thought I was always going to be in, or I knew that it was a problem, but I just didn't know how to get out of it. So
Get you unstuck.
It's been great for me.
So
Yeah.
I want to, if you don't mind me jumping in, Jim and Jenny and Joanne, but I'm from NAAP in the San Jose. I'm on the board up there, as most of you know, and kudos for this event, NAAP LA, very well done. And I just want to say something about the cohort. I took it for the first time just recently, and I'm going to take it again. And I learned a lot about myself really this time around. And I will definitely continue to learn more about myself the next time around too. So it's a wonderful cohort. It's worth taking. You'll learn lots. You will definitely learn lots. That's my objective about it.
good. Thanks, Nick. And it's more than just the cohort, right? Once you go through the cohort, you're in this community, and you have this leadership language that Abraham and I talked about earlier. And we want you to continue to foster that. Like, we don't want to feel like you're dependent on us. Like, we want you to have a community within NAAAP. And so every alumni gets a chance to not only be a part of this LinkedIn group page where they share with each other what they're learning, what they're going through, their struggles, and they're helping each other out. But at the same time, we also provide additional continuing education type of classes that helps you to apply what you learned from the cohort to further level up your leadership from this baseline of things that we teach. Abraham, do you have anything that you want to share about it or add?
No, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory with regards to all the details of it on the Eventbrite. So definitely take a look at it. If you have any questions, just reach out to us. I will definitely help you to understand every component of this process.
Joanne, are we doing a networking portion as well after this?
We could. I thought this was already a networking thing because it's a very community collaboration conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because we have 10 minutes left before this program ends. So any last minute questions, comments, or maybe you just want to share your information in the chat box so you guys can connect offline. We strongly encourage that because as a NAAAP community, we just like to connect people with people and especially grow the Asian community.
We like to have fun, so we like to say nap with us. Right? But yeah, I mean, if you want to do the networking portion, we can. Or like split people up or.
Yeah. Abe and I have to jump off because we got a class in 10 minutes that we have to prep for.
Okay.
But yeah, please reach out to us. Any questions that you have, we're really happy to that you joined, and we're here for you. We definitely want you all to be successful in your leadership ventures, and definitely put more Asians on the leadership map.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. Thanks, Braindom. Thanks, NAAAP, for everything and just giving us an opportunity to share. Take care.
Thank you.